Hi everyone, welcome to the next installment of our webinar series on the Microsoft Modern Workplace. My name is Chris Chalmers and I'm the Senior Solutions Architect with Hintsu. I've worked in the industry for roughly 8 years now, which has predominantly been with managed service providers across private and public cloud environments, where I gained exposure to a broad range of sectors and technologies. In my role at Hintsu, I've recently been focusing on the Microsoft Azure 365 platform, perform various migrations to the public clouds, and the security aspects surrounding those. Today's webinar, we'll be focusing on boosting your security with Azure information protection and data loss prevention. For the purposes of shorthanding these, I'll probably refer to them as AIP and DLP going forward, just to make things slightly easier. The format of today's webinar, I'll give a quick overview of each technology, how it can benefit financial firms such as yourselves, common use cases that we see, and then following the overview, I will give a demonstration of how it works technically, both from the administrator console side, but also from the user workflow perspective. So if we take a look at DLP firstly, DLP, or data loss prevention, is a way to identify your sensitive information, which can happen across different locations. If we're looking at the 365 platform, you can apply DLP policies to your Exchange email, SharePoint sites, OneDrive accounts, and also your Teams chat and channel messages. The DLP policies on the right-hand side that we typically implement for the financial sector are UK-US financial data, then UK and US PII data. In terms of what's inside each of these, if we take the UK financial data, it looks for credit card numbers, debit card numbers, and such. And then under the PII data is things such as driver's license, passport numbers, or social security numbers. Within each of the DLP policies, it can be split into two policy settings, which are most commonly low volume of content and high volume of content. The primary difference between the two and the way that DLP works is it will detect low volume based on the number of occurrences of sensitive information that it picks up, either in the email or the file document. Low volume of content by default is occurrences somewhere between 1 to 9, and then high volume of content is 10 occurrences plus. You can take different actions and different notifications based on the different content that are detected. So for example, if it detects low volume of content, which we can demonstrate later, it will show the policy tip and it will inform the users directly. If you detect high volume of content, you can outright restrict it, block it from being sent, and you can then send instant reports as well to designated administrators. DLP's primary purpose is to prevent the accidental sharing of sensitive information. Nowadays, or more recently, there's been a number of phishing attempts, and it's quite common for requests to come through for payment details, invoice numbers, credit card numbers. These can be impersonated, and often we find that those can be sent out. DLP helps giving the user a policy tip notification, and if it detects multiple occurrences, it can block it as well. It can help your users stay compliant without interrupting their workflow. Since DLP is integrated inside the Microsoft applications across emails plus Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc. It's really non-intrusive. They don't have to learn separate tools, separate applications. They can work as normal, and it's more DLP will pop up, notify them if it detects anything. From the reporting side, DLP has a couple of graphs here as well. It will demonstrate the DLP policy matches, which is within the tenant. In this case, for my testing, I sent out some emails which hit the DLP, and I triggered 5. There's also the option of DLP false positives. With anything, like these, there's an element of self-learning, configuration, and fine-tuning over time. It's not uncommon that your DLP policies can flag things incorrectly. When the policy tip comes up, which I can show you later on as well, the user has the option to mark the tip as a false positive. It might be detecting something incorrectly where it's flagging as a credit card number, but it could be things like serial numbers, for example. So it lets the user give some self-service, and the administrator then receives notification of that false positive, and then can either adjust the policy on the back end, or there might be some user education around that as well. So I can show you a quick demo from the administrator console and then from the user perspective of how DLP functions. I shortly pull up my RDB. So I have a standard Windows 10 desktop that I use as a sandbox. And for this, if I create a new email address, sorry, I will first show the administrator console actually. You should see that okay. So from the administrator side, DLP is available through protection.office.com. On the left-hand side, the data loss prevention tab, and then underneath policy, you'll see the list of policies that I have from the PowerPoint deck here as well. And we've got financial and US. You can create new policies quite simply, and there are a lot of out-of-the-box templates that Microsoft can provide, broken down into categories. So there's a wide range of different countries, medical and health data, also privacy information, and you can create custom ones as well if you wish. If we were to create a new financial one, for example, say we're based in Germany, you can choose which locations the DLP applies to. By default, it will cover all of the locations, but you can be specific as well. And you can select. With each of these, you can include all, and you can add exclusions to these as well. You might want a default catch-all for your SharePoint sites, but there are specific SharePoint sites inside there perhaps that contain financial documents, payroll, or trade accounts that you want to exclude. And then policy settings determine what the DLP would catch. In this case, it's looking for credit card numbers and debit card numbers. And it's detecting when the content is shared with people outside. The opposite is inside organization. If we take a quick look at an existing policy, and I can show you how the low volume of content and high volume works. We take a look at our UK financial data. Just loads. Inside here, so all this is the overall policy. You have two policy settings, low volume and high volume. And if we dig a little bit deeper inside, you can then expand here as well. If we edit the rule, you have a tabular view at the top where you can click and it will take you to the appropriate section, or you can also pull the screen. So this policy setting is looking for content that contains credit card numbers, debit card numbers, or SWIFT codes. And you can see the instant counts here. So it's looking where it would detect it between 1 to 9. And there's also accuracy settings as well to determine. It will be when content is shared outside. And there's a number of actions that you can take as well. On the low volume, there is none, but you do have the option to restrict access or encrypt, or you can change the headers as well. From the notification side, there is user notifications, and it will also simultaneously notify the person who sent, shared, or modified, and also any owners of the site or the OneDrive. So if you're sharing content from a OneDrive or a SharePoint site that you're a member of, if you're sharing from there, whoever the owner is would get notified that you've attempted to share that content. Instant reports as well. This is the primary difference between low volume and high volume content, which I can show you shortly as well. So if we cancel from the low volume, and then we look at the high volume as a quick comparison. So the content types are the same, but you'll see that it differs with the instance minimums and maximums. Whereas low was 1 to 9, this is 10 to any. Content is still shared external. Your user notifications are the same, but under your incident reports, you're flagging it as high, and you're sending it to site admins as well. So we navigate back out. I can then show you how this works on the user side from my desktop. Okay, so if I go back to the email that I was in, if I'm sending it outside, so this is from my sandbox tenant into my Hintsu account, and a common occurrence for us might be laptop orders, and you could say, hi team. I've got some predefined text here, which just says, can you order me a laptop? Use my Visa number with a dummy expiry and the estimated delivery date. So I could complete the email. Even in the short time that I copied and pasted, you see the policy tip popped up on the Outlook bar. If you hover over, it gives a little bit more information of what exactly it detected the match on. In this case, it was credit card number or debit card number. And with the false positives, this is how you would do that. You can report it, and that's then submitted to the administrator. The policy tip changes that your feedback's been submitted. If I'm still confident and happy to send the email address, the email, I can. And then when the email is sent, it will still trigger the DLP, and the user would then get a notification just to confirm that that has been sent, but it has triggered as well. So this just confirms the email has left, but it did match some DLP policies within the organization. It's quite a powerful tool from the user perspective, and it's really non-intrusive to them. It does take a bit of fine tuning for the rules, I would say, but once you get it working, it can definitely benefit and prevent those accidental mistakes of data leaving. And if we now have a look at Azure information protection, where data loss prevention was more of an organization level policy on the back end, I usually find that AIP is more user focused, and it gives even more self-service to the user that they can use AIP. AIP's primary focus, where it differs slightly from DLP, is that you can classify your organizational content. In this case, within AIP, I've got 4 labels set up right now: unrestricted, confidential, restricted, and then financial. For each of these labels, you can apply marking, protection, or both to them. Protection being if you're sending to an external domain, as I've got here, for example, if I send it to Hintsu and I tag the document or the email as restricted, then the recipient at hintsu.com would only have your rights to that document. They wouldn't be able to edit it in any way. Whereas if you apply marking, it's watermarking in either the header, the footer, or the background with any phrases or words or colors that you want to. Similar to DLP, it integrates quite nicely into the end user workflows for both documents and emails. Where DLP is a policy tip, AIP is an agent-based application on the desktop, which installs a small toolbar and add-in within their Office application. From here, you can see the protect lock under protection, and then you have the bar underneath your add-ins, which in this case is showing confidential. Similar to DLP as well, there's reporting here. The reporting requirements for AIP differ slightly though, in that you need to set up a log analytics workspace on Azure. It's a small cost to ingest the data and then view it each month, but I'd say that it's more than worth it for the information that you can see. The reporting is a lot more granular in this case. You can see usage of labels, where the labels have been used within applications, and you can also see which users and devices are making use of those. With any new technology we find, user adoption can sometimes be tricky. If you review the AIP reporting, you can see which users are actively using it, maybe make them champions or advocates to spread the word, so to speak, so that others can make use of it, protect your data, and keep it secure. I can show you how that differs from DLP on the administrator side, first of all. All right, now get back to my browser. Where DLP was under the Office login, your AIP is under portal.azure.com. You can either, if you aren't already there, you can search in the top bar and you'll see Azure Information Protection here as well, and it will take you to the same landing page. You would predominantly be within the classification section of labels and policies, similar to I described not long ago. We have these, and if we look inside the financial label, since that has both marking and protection applied, there are some specific settings that we can cover. You can set display names. The colors are available here as well if you have any company branding that you want to try and match in. From the protection side, if we'll look at that firstly, you can set the permissions here. So in this case, for my external domain, it's a co-author. My hintsu.com domain is a viewer, and if I add permissions, you can customize it. You can target your internal tenant, authenticated users, or browse any directories that you're federated to. Typically, we would enter other details and then add. You have a chart of permissions here. You can take the 4 out of the box permissions that are available, and these aren't then editable, or you can create your own custom permissions for that specific domain. In this case, we can just make it reviewer. You can set any content expiration or offline access, which would require them to log back into their office. Okay. And from the marking side, you have 3 available options. You can mark the document with headers, footers, or a background watermark. In this case, I've got this enabled, so I can show you that shortly. And you have some other finer details for font sizes, names, or specific colors. Where AIP almost takes it the next step further is it can be a bit smart around it, and that you can look for specific conditions similar to DLP, and you can either automatically apply the recommendation, or you can have a similar policy tip where if it's detected, the user sees a banner, AIP recommends that label, and then it's more of a user choice at that point. From the labels are then used within policies. Out of the box, there is a global policy, which is set for all users in the tenant. One thing to keep in mind, if you do create other labels, make sure to add them in here. So if you had more. And a couple of settings to be aware of here, you can apply default labels if you wish, or leave it user customizable. This is where I've set my analytics logging. You can also enforce that all documents and emails must have labels applied. And another important one that can come up quite often is providing justification to set a lower classification label. For example, if you set a document as restricted, if the user then tries to change it to unrestricted, it will pop up, prompt them, and they would then have to justify why that might be the case. usually we've seen documents be more restricted over time rather than less. So that's just to catch that either unusual behavior or mistake that might be made. And the other one that can have a little bit of a user impact is the information protection bar inside the Office apps. Where I've got this set on by default, it will push it out across everyone, whereas if you have it off, the user can choose whether to show or hide it within the applications. And those are the ones to be aware of, I would say. And I can now show you how AIP works from the user perspective. Similar, so I can have a Word document here, which is just blank. And you can see that I've got the AIP bar at the top. I've got the add-in here as well, which is either showing or hiding the bar. If I first set the document as unrestricted, it removes the option, but I can do it. I can edit the label afterwards. I can move it up to confidential. I can go all the way through to restricted, which then applies protection. And then when we take the next step up to financial, it then applies watermarking to it. And if we then drop back down to restricted, since we have justification required enabled, they would receive this pop-up, and they can either simply choose that the previous label no longer applies, or they have to enter an explanation. So demo. And then we can also jump down to unrestricted. Same applies, you have to do justification. And instead of jumping one by one up, you can also go straight from unrestricted to financial, and that applies it properly as well. Within, you can do this all within the Office apps, but you can also do it from the Windows Explorer side. AIP is integrated into the right-click context menu, so you can classify and protect. It then opens up the small application, and you can see the current label, which is applied as restricted. I can then choose to do unrestricted, and when I hit apply, I get the same justification prompt. So I can see that the previous label no longer applies. So you can do it from within the app, or in other cases, you don't even have to open up the file. You can do it directly from Windows Explorer. And now that I made some changes, we can see how that looks on the reporting side. So back in the Azure console, there is analytics configured under my management tab. So I've got a log analytics workspace running in my Azure subscription. And then if we look under the analytics section under user reporting, you will get 4 graphs. Yep, and you can see label and protection activity, which users and devices are using AIP, which labels are most used, and also where the labels are used, depending on the application. For example, if we pick some logs that I recently done, since it sits within log analytics, you'll be redirected to the workspace, and it will show you more of a log trail view. You can also customize some queries as well if you're feeling adventurous to pull out more specific details that you want to search for. In this case, we can see that my time generated, you can see which object was modified. I quite like this feature that it doesn't just mention the document name, it'll mention the specific path, which can be useful if you're running on a file server or multiple file servers. Rather than just showing the folder, it will show you the specific path. You can see activities that were taken, if there were any downgrades, new labels, or upgrades, which application that was done in, and then label names. It also drills down into details with machine names and user IDs. It will also mention if there's any protection applied and if there's any templates. Let's scroll all the way back and we can see our other labels. So we can see if we were to look at users and devices. The log analytics is all very similar. It just filters slightly differently. So we'll see similar information and similar columns. Once the query runs, it then returns the number of records that are available. So now we can see here. Very similar view. But these are all customizable to whichever you want to look for if you write in the query language. Okay. That concludes the webinar as an overview to DLP and AIP. I hope you found that useful. If you've got any questions, comments, or interest in utilizing these going forward, feel free to reach out to us through hello@hintsu.com, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.